Vernisa.
Hey y'all, this is Jen.
And this is our podcast.
Speak Up.
What's up, Jen?
Hey girl.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Glad we made it to episode 56.
Yo, 56 already. Damn.
Yeah, time is flying. For those of you that don't know, me and Jen are best friends. We create this podcast to use our voices to motivate people to overcome life challenges through self-love and respect.
Self-love and respect, two things we're always going to hold near and dear to our hearts.
Yes. So, Jen, what is our title for today?
Today, our episode is called Accept or Reject.
Accept or reject? Accept or reject what?
What you think we talking about?
Look, today we talking about handling rejection and dealing with it. Like being able to accept when rejection happens. Honestly, rejection is a part of life and it's normal. And I feel like if you take in rejection, it'll stunt you from growing.
That's major facts. Yeah. Honestly, we wanted to talk about this because, you know, like you said, rejection is a part of life and it's something that we deal with even as a child, right? And it's something that can follow us as an adult. So we make sure that we're not letting whatever rejections we dealt with when we were younger affect us as an adult. And I'm not saying it can't happen. It's just more of like how to cope with that rejection from a young age in order for you to be able to handle it better when you get older.
That is so true. Yeah, I think about, like, I like that you brought up our childhood because that's literally where it starts. It's like the first rejection that you've seen. You know, somebody real close to us, she talks about positive self-talk and negative self-talk, she talks about how as children we're told no a certain amount of times, and then that goes into that rejection. And then I think when it follows us, we start to just question ourselves.
I know I've had that happen for sure. Like I mean, I don't know how many times we've gotten rejected as a child, but I know it's definitely a lot because you see it too, right? Like, and I don't think we do it in a harmful way or with malintentions, but it's more of like, you know, as kids, we're curious, we're exploring and everything. So, of course, we see them doing something. It's like, no, you know, or don't go for that or don't do that or whatever. But I feel like we tell kids more of what not to do versus what to do, right? And then it's more of like we have that ingrained in our system. Well, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. Don't get me wrong, sometimes these rules help us and they, you know, shape us into who we are. We learn precaution this way, but at the same time, like it can be destructive when that's all we know and we grow up like as a timid child, you know, thinking we're not allowed to do certain things, not allowed to say certain things. So this is why it's important for us to really be thinking about like that rejection, because it is going to happen, right? Whether it's for a job interview or, you know, a person that you wanted to be with or whatever. So rejection comes in all forms in life, but we need to think about like which is the best way to handle these different types of rejections.
I think that was beautifully said. And I think too, we can go deeper to like when you're a child and you're rejected by a certain parent. That's deep. I feel like a lot of us, you know, take that, you know, when it's like, you know, I can relate with that with one of my parents, like feeling that rejection and seeing how it's followed me and how I viewed like getting close to certain people and things like that. Or even like, I mean, let's be real, little kids are mean. Like when you're in school,
girl,
you should be rejected by your first crush, or you know, just those little things like kids being mean to each other because of the pain they've seen at home. All that stuff ties into your self-image.
I mean, I just gotta say though, even though my first grade crush rejected me, he wanted me back years later. So
same. So we were similar on that. Oh, just talk about that today.
Yes.
Actually,
the glow up is real.
The glow up is real.
But anyway, that's a whole different topic. But yeah, like you bring up that really good point where like how do we stop ourselves from internalizing that, right? Like how do we keep ourselves from knowing that it's more personal versus not personal, and really realizing that even though like this person or this parent rejected us, it's more of about them versus us, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like a lot of parents, you know, they don't realize how harmful they can be to their child and their growth at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true. So we just wanted to, you know, say that if you always let your circumstances like, you know, charge you or drive you and everything, you're always going to be a victim to it, especially if you take things more personally. Like we have to learn to stop internalizing this rejection and just realize that sometimes people we're not their taste, right? Whether it is as whatever we are in their lives. And that's okay too, because I'm sure we've done it also, rejected somebody who's not our style or whatever. And I'm not just talking about relationships. It can be like, you know, on a business venture that you wanted to go into or something. So we just got to learn to balance that part of life where it's like, am I rejecting this person because they don't fit my lifestyle or something, or is it something personal that I have against them?
Yeah, and then I'm glad you brought up internalizing, because once we start internalizing, what does that do? That creates that negative self-talk, and then that messes with your confidence. So that makes you not want to like go after a business venture, approach certain family members or certain friends, or like approach certain relationships, especially let's talk about business ventures for a while. Like, let's say, it's something, you have a big idea or you want to build something, and then that rejection is starting. If you don't have that inner self-confidence, what are you going to do? You're going to give up. You're not going to pursue your dreams, your passions. Like, I can't tell you how many times me and Jen have been rejected with this podcast, certain audiences, but guess what? We keep going, and when the progress is being made, we're happy, or we're adding value to people's lives. That's what keeps us going. That's what fuels us, because we believe in ourselves. But it takes a lot of that self-image and like pushing through that rejection. That's any business venture. That's if you were to start a hair company, whatever you wanted to do, it's going to come with some type of rejection.
For sure.
For that pressure, that frustration, and all that. And then, you might even get rejection from your own family by trying to start your own thing. But in the day, you have to keep going regardless of what your family or friends say.
Oh, that's very true. I think one of the first times I actually felt rejected, even before starting this podcast and anything, was I wanted to go to a certain school. I had like my dream college or whatever, and I got rejected by it. And it worked out in the long run to not go or whatever, but at the same time, like in that moment, I was so sad. I was like, I have the grades for it, the extracurricular activities, blah, 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 etc. On paper, it was good, but it was just something that wasn't meant for me, right? And I'm not saying it stopped being any less of a good school or anything, because whatever, but it just turns out that wasn't right for my life, that my particular journey looked different from what I thought I had set out to do. And that's the thing too, sometimes there's blessings in those rejections that we need to realize there's a different path we need to take, different people we need to be around. So I'm not saying if you start a business venture that you're not meant to do this. I'm just saying that maybe you're meant to do it differently, or a different style of it, something, but just thinking about like what that looks like. But if you let all kinds of rejection just drive your life, then you're always just gonna be like, well, that didn't work out, and just kind of sit there. No, like use that rejection as a push. After you feel better, of course, because don't get me wrong, you have
to let that mood pass.
Right, you gotta mope. But after like letting that pass, you just kind of use that as like a new direction, right? Like, okay, what did this rejection teach me, and how can I push forward? Because sometimes those rejections too are about how much you can handle, and if this is really what you want, you're gonna have to come along those rejections along the way.
And that's why you have to surround yourself with the right people, the right support system. Me and Jeremy talking about that earlier, and also too, like, you doing all this with the rejection and like being a slave to it, that's how you become, you become the behavior of seeking validation. Because guess what, you don't want to be rejected, so you'll do anything to not be rejected. And then guess what, you start to lose yourself in that, because you're so worried about what other people think that you're not even being yourself anymore. And I think that's something that we have to learn to avoid. I had to learn to avoid that, because I used to be scared of rejection as well too. But then once I came more into myself and owning who I am, it's like, okay, I don't care who or what rejects. If it's not for me, then it's not meant to be in my circle, around me, and that's where self-acceptance comes in. And once you have that, nobody can tell you anything.
Man, ain't that the truth? I can't remember how many times I stopped myself, even as a little kid, like from doing something just because I wanted the kids to think I was cool or whatever, I was very fearful growing up of like trying new things, but at the same time I wasn't. But it's just like you don't realize how much you internalize that need for validation of somebody else outside of you, and you don't realize how much, like how toxic that is to yourself also when you grow up and you're starting to venture out into brand new things. But just even the littlest things, like when I was younger, I was afraid to try out for certain sports teams. This was when I was really little, like in elementary school. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this because what if I don't get in, or what if I hurt myself on an audition or whatever. And I missed out on a lot. And I told myself, like, getting older into middle school and high school, that I wasn't going to do that anymore, that I was going to try out for the teams that I wanted to. And even if I didn't get in, at least I knew that I tried, right? And this was something that I was passionate about, and I made it through or didn't or whatever. And at the same time, I learned something about myself too, that I survived after those rejections. I'm still here, and everything. And I ended up doing other stuff, but it was pretty cool. Like just learning that about myself, that I can make it through after those. But it's only because I stopped seeking that validation from other people.
And I love that you have those convos with yourself, like, patting yourself on the back for getting through and pushing through. And I think, honestly, like, I'm not a parent yet, of course, but I think that's something that it's important to instill in our children. I think we grow up with our parents making us afraid of rejection. Like, think about it, when you go to school, it's like, oh, you better not do, you better get accepted into this, you better do this. And we grow up, already kind of brainwashed into that we forget to go into life going for what we really want, because our parents even instilled their rejection fears onto us, to where it scares us even want to take any risk in life. Like, think about I'm sorry, we went back to business, but think about like those business ventures that people don't even see themselves doing this. That's why people try to talk you out of it, because they're afraid of that rejection, so they don't even want that onto you. But I think that all like goes together, everything you were saying, like that push, that self-confidence, and self-acceptance, and like speaking your way through those rejections. You have to ask yourself, when that rejection does come, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to take rejection? Because rejection sometimes is inevitable. But it's like how you move on after it happens, that's what really matters. Yeah. I mean, more often than not, you're going to get rejected by something, by someone, whatever. It's only certain times where you get lucky enough to make it through on the first try or whatever, which is cool. It happens, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, it's not something you can count on. So yeah, like Vernisa was saying, what are you doing with that rejection after it does happen? Like, are you just going to give up, or are you going to find a different way to make things happen, or whatever? Maybe you do realize that it isn't for you after all, after you tried it, after that rejection, but at least you learned. Like, I keep going back to this video that I saw. The guy in the video, he said, I would rather live with a bunch of oh wells than a bunch of what ifs. And I've taken that to life, and it comes with those rejections, like knowing, oh well, I tried and I got rejected for it or whatever, but what am I doing with that afterwards? Yeah, that's always the big question that we have to ask ourselves. And then in the day, all it is setting you up for opportunity that's different or better. When God closes one door, another door opens. And I think that's a big thing. Like, knowing what's for us at the end of the day. Sometimes what's the word? Rejection is protection. And I think that's hard. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around that. I ain't gonna lie. Like, sometimes, like, I'll be rejected something, like, why is this happening, or whatever. I can't believe this. But then later down the line, when, like you said, something better does appear, or whatever, or like I was blocked from something, I was being protected, I'm like, okay, and I could push through. And that taught me how to really trust divine timing, and to let things flow and let things be how it's supposed to be at the end of the day. For sure. I mean, rejection fuels growth at times too. And I think that's the biggest thing that we can take from it, right? That it's character building for us, that it is learning, it is a part of life. Like, you're not guaranteed anything in life. So one thing you can be guaranteed is that rejection. It's going to come for whatever you're trying, even for something like a job or school, or, I don't know, relationships all the time, like different things, anything that you're setting yourself out to do, any goals you have to be prepared for that rejection that is coming along the way, because it's not a matter of if it'll happen, it's a matter of when it'll happen. I love that you say character building. That is so beautiful. Like, I love when people try something, they fail at it, and they try again. Like, what scene gets to me? I always bring Disney Channel Mulan. I'm sorry, that scene when she was climbing the thing to get the arrow off the wood when that song was on. I love that scene. I don't care. That's a beautiful scene to put in. Like, I don't know, as a kid, to see that, like, to see her, like, whatever, she was climbing and she kept failing, but that rejection, no one on the in the army wanted to deal with her, wanted anything to do with her, but she kept trying. When she got to the top and hit that thing on the floor, I don't know, I just love that scene, because that's an example of, like, even though it's a character building moment. She could have gave up, left, okay, forget this ain't for me, but she kept trying, and then it made her stronger. And I think that's how we have to take life sometimes. Those rejections will happen, but you can come back better and push through, and be a stronger person at the end of the day. Yeah, I've heard this quote that says, after rejection happens and you try again, at least you're not starting from zero, you're starting from experience. So you learned what didn't work, or you learned this worked at a certain point, but then at this point it didn't. So what am I going to do at that point? So there's so many quotes that we can relate to rejection, but at the end of the day, it is about how you're building your own strength and then building that character. And this is the biggest test of how it relates to self-love, because you're trying for something that you want to do, something that maybe you were passionate about, or you've been dreaming about since you were a kid, or just want to try for what the heck, I'm in my 20s, I want to try something new, whatever. Like, it's okay to venture out into new things, as long as they're healthy, of course, and legal. We got to put that out there. Yes. But it's about still, like, loving yourself enough to know that even if I get rejected, it's not about why they didn't want me. It's more about, what did I learn from this? Why do I want it? Why do I still love myself enough to still go after it, even after that rejection? That's beautiful, and I think it relates to self-love too, because guess what, even though you're being rejected, you're not rejecting yourself. You're aware of the growth that still needs to be done, you're working on it, and you're finding new opportunities and pathways that are healthier for you anyway, and that are made for you. And I think, me and Jenna really talk about that, like going for what's for you, getting through things in a healthy manner. And I think it's very important to to pay attention to that. And also to if you're dealing with a loved one, they're experiencing rejection, think about what you would tell them, right? Tell that to yourself. I think we're always the one trying to help others, but then we don't pour that same love back into ourselves. And I'm learning to do that as well, because it's like, I could say I'm a healer, I add value, me and Jim both, whatever. But then if I'm having a moment, I need to put that same cap on for myself as well. Like Jen always tells me, be kinder to yourself. And I said, those are words she's always instilled in me, and that are still helping me to this day. And I appreciate her for that, for always instilling that into me, because I had to learn that. So I feel like even with rejection, even when the world is being hard on you, still be easy on yourself and nurture yourself through it.
Very true and very well said. Brene Brown has that quote that says, talk to yourself or treat yourself the way you would a loved one. And that's kind of what we're trying to get at, right? That no matter what you're going through, like, don't be your worst enemy. We got enough people in our ear telling us we can't do this, we can't do that. Why do we have to add on to that? So it's thinking about like, what would you tell your best friend? What would you tell your sister, your brother, your parents, somebody trying something new who you cared about near and dear? Like, what would you tell them if they were experiencing some sort of rejection? And it can be any type of rejection. And I think one of the biggest things that I would tell somebody is rejection doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean that it's not valid. It doesn't mean that it doesn't matter anymore. It just means like, all right, let's find a different path. And we may not know that path right away. It's just about not giving up, not letting go of that dream, that passion that you so desperately want.
Yeah. And then, like Jen was saying, with the path, rejection is that redirection. It's okay to get a new map. Sometimes the script isn't always the way we have planned it. That's life. Like, so many random things get thrown. But hey, sometimes that rejection will get you where you're meant to be. Yeah. And what did Marilyn Monroe say? It's part of a longer quote, but it ends with, sometimes good things fall apart so better things can fall together. Look. And I love that too. I didn't realize how many quotes we were putting into this episode, but I think we're a very quotes type of duo. But like, it's true though, thinking about that, because sometimes we're so concerned about like, oh well, this was working out, or I had a certain structure to this or whatever. But at the same time, okay, even though those things were good, maybe there's something better on that horizon waiting for you. Maybe God does have a different direction for you. And think about it too, like our path, we may want it to look this way, right? Shoot, wouldn't life be smooth as hell if we just did it this way? But no, God always has the twists and turns, the detours. You fall off that path and then you gotta take twice as long to get back on it or whatever, or you gotta take 2 steps back because you didn't learn your lesson back there or something. There's always gonna be something, but it's just about knowing what you want your end goal to look like. And even if you don't know 5 years from now exactly what you want that end goal to look like, what do you want that this month to look like, the end of this week to look like, and what can I do to get there? And it's just about those baby steps, because also things fall apart, right? We know, especially with everything going on, like we know that things may not have panned out. They may not have panned out the way that we wanted them to. Shoot, we had plans for this podcast that we had to kind of skirt along the other way, but it doesn't mean that we fell off of it. It doesn't mean that we've given up on this certain path. It just means that, all right, we're on this other highway to it, and we got to find our way back to this one. And I want to add on too, the most successful people have failed more than us. Me and Jen, have mentors in life, and honestly, that's one of their biggest quotes, that they failed more than us, and that's a fact. Failed and rejected. That's what I meant to say. They got rejected the most, and that's what led them to the success that they have. And honestly, we can't be afraid of that rejection, because that rejection is going to come with that grind. But you just quitting or giving up on yourself, how are you going to know what the success looks like if you're not pushing through the rejection, through the pressure to even get there in the first place?
That's very true. We got to normalize rejection, because at the end of the day, too, I think rejection helps remind us how bad we want things.
Tell it.
Yeah, like we keep talking about this passion, this dream that you have and everything, which is beautiful. But at the same time, how bad do you want it? How do you want to get there? And are you prepared to get through those obstacles, those struggles? Because they are going to come. Regardless, anything worth having is not going to be easy. So that rejection is going to be there. And just being reminded of that, I think this is going to sound twisted, but like I like rejections in a way because they keep me focused. They remind me like why I started in the first place. And even though they suck, don't get me wrong, no matter how many times I get rejected, I'm just like, all right, well, you know, that sucked. And yeah, I mope about it for a moment, but it just also fuels that fire all over again. So look at it as a blessing too. Like use it as a positive experience.
I love that. End of the day, y'all, rejection is everywhere. So I don't care what relationship, business, whatever, like, you know, expect it. Don't be afraid of it. Push through it, and just know that you are still the ish regardless of what happens, right? So
yeah, that's major facts. And just look at the lessons in every type of rejection, because life is always trying to teach us something, right? Life, God, the universe, they have a sense of humor. So we got to remember that sometimes we don't see those curveballs coming, but at the same time, like we just got to learn to roll with the punches.
And through it all, prioritize your mental health and your positive self-talk through it.
That's right.
We appreciate y'all checking out our 56th episode. We're also, check us out on Instagram at SpeakUpJV. We're on Podbean at SpeakUpJV.podbean.com. We're on Twitter at SpeakUpJV. Please tweet us, you know, shoot, we love to hear from y'all, ask us questions. We're on Spotify, Apple, apparently iHeartRadio. What else are we on, Jen?
We're also on the Good News Radio live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can check us out by downloading the Good News Radio app. And make sure to interact with us in the chat. Call in too. We love hearing from our viewers, our listeners. You know, we love having those controversial topics with y'all too.
Yes, and the link is in our bio. I mean, it's in our bio on our podcast page as well. So on Instagram at SpeakUpJV. So just tap in, tune in.
Love y'all.
Love y'all.